The cameras flashed like angry stars, blinding but not as blinding as the humiliation. Tonight was supposed to be Rowan's triumph, but he'd made it his wife Anna's trial. Standing on the steps of the Metropolitan Museum, he looped his arm not around Anna, but around Irina, his mistress, letting the photographers capture the blatant betrayal. He smirked, whispering to Irina, "Just try to keep up, Anna. The real players are here." He thought his wife was just quiet, simple, old money, background noise. He thought she was nobody. But in 2 hours, a king would take the stage, and Rowan would learn that the nobody he just discarded was the one person who owned his entire world. The penthouse on Central Park South was a monument to glass, steel, and silence. It was Rowan Thorne's monument to himself. For his wife Anna, it was a beautiful, sterile prison, perched 48 floors above a city she couldn't touch. Anna traced the rim of a porcelain teacup, the morning sun illuminating the expensive empty space around her. Every object in the $30 million apartment had been chosen by Rowan's decorator to scream, "New money." Power chrome sculptures, vast, empty, white sofas, and abstract art that was loud, but said nothing. Her only contribution, a small, quiet 17th century Dutch landscape, was relegated to her dressing room, which Rowan called the museum. Rowan Thorne, founder and CEO of Helios Dynamics, was a man who had built an empire on solar energy and sheer brutal ambition. He had met Anna Vance at a Sotheby's charity auction 3 years prior. He saw a woman of quiet, understated elegance with a knowledge of art and history that spoke of a good family and old established connections. He saw Anna Vance, a Vance, of the Boston Vances he'd assumed. She was beautiful, poised, and most importantly, unassuming. She would be the perfect, polished accessory for a man on the rise. Anna, for her part, had just wanted to be Anna Vance. She had grown up suffocated by protocol security and the crushing weight of a title she never asked for. She'd been granted a gap year, which had stretched into 2, to study art history in New York under an assumed, simplified name. She'd yearned for a life where she could be loved for her mind, for her quiet humor, for herself, not for the flag on her family's car. When Rowan pursued her, he was charming, driven, and seemed to adore her quiet nature. He didn't want to be in the spotlight he'd claimed. He just wanted to build. So she'd agreed to marry him, a complex arrangement that her father had reluctantly sanctioned. Her family, operators of one of the world's most powerful and discreet sovereign wealth funds, saw Helios Dynamics as a promising, if volatile, investment. They had agreed to fund Rowan's vision, routing the capital through a labyrinth of shell corporations and anonymous equity firms. The primary one was simply known as the Eldorian Sovereign Fund. Rowan, blinded by his own ego, believed he had simply wooed a faceless, risk-averse European fund. He had no idea the majority stakeholder he sent quarterly reports to was in fact his wife. The last year had seen the rot set in. As Helios Dynamics boomed, Rowan's charm had evaporated, replaced by a cold, cutting arrogance. He found her quietness was no longer poised. It was boring. Her practicality was unimaginative. Her disinterest in fame was a liability. The sound of his bedroom door opening pulled her from her thoughts. Rowan emerged, knotting a black silk tie. He didn't kiss her. He barely looked at her. "Anna," he said, tapping his phone. "The car is downstairs in 30 for the fitting. I need you to look perfect tonight. This gala, it's everything. We're finalizing the Hong Kong expansion." "Good morning, Rowan. I'm all ready." "Fitted." He finally looked up. She was wearing a simple pale blue sheath dress. Fitted for what the gardener's luncheon. That's what you're wearing. No, Rowan, this is for my charity board meeting this morning. My gown for tonight is already pressed. Which one is it? He demanded, walking to the espresso machine. The one I showed you, the dark green silk. Rowan sighed, a sound of profound theatrical disappointment. The green one. Anna, I told you Irina is wearing custom Valeriano. The press release just went out. She's going to be in crimson. I need you to compete, not fade into the wallpaper. That green dress makes you look like a librarian. Irina. The name hung in the air, thick and toxic. Irina Sanchez was a social media influencer and brand strategist who had attached herself to Rowan 6 months ago. At first, Anna had assumed it was a professional flirtation. Now it was a public affair. Irina was everything Anna was not: loud, plastic, demanding, and utterly obsessed with fame. Rowan, it turned out, was utterly obsessed with her. The green dress is appropriate, Anna said, her voice even. Her training, a lifetime of it, knew how to hide the tremor. Appropriate, Rowan scoffed, taking a sip of espresso. That's the problem. You're always appropriate. You're never stunning. You're never dangerous. You're just there. Do you know what my investors see when they look at you? Anna looked at him, her heart a cold, heavy stone. What do they see, Rowan? They see a liability, he snapped. They see a quiet, mousy woman who doesn't understand the power game. I'm getting the Visionary of the Year award tonight at the Metropolitan Innovators Gala. Me. And I'll be damned if you're going to stand next to me, looking like you're attending a PTA meeting. Call your stylist. Tell her to find something. Anything else. Something with sequins. Something in gold. Show some skin. Try to look like you're alive. He didn't wait for a reply. He grabbed his briefcase and walked out. The heavy door of the penthouse clicked shut, echoing in the vast, silent room. Anna sat there for a full minute. The mask of calm remained, but a single tear traced a hot path down her cheek. She'd tried so hard to be the wife he wanted, the simple Anna Vance. She had hidden her lineage, her wealth, her power, all to be loved for who she was. And this was the result. She picked up her own phone. She didn't call a stylist. She called a different number 1, secured and routed through Zurich. A quiet, accented voice answered on the first ring. Sarah. Good morning. Good morning, you're high. Anna. She corrected a note of exhaustion in her voice. Just Anna, please. Not until... not unless. Anna, her assistant, Sarah, corrected herself. Is everything all right? Sarah was not just an assistant. She was her lady-in-waiting, a close friend from her real life, currently posing as a New York social secretary. He's taking her tonight, Anna said, her voice low. He's going to have her on the red carpet. The protocol, then? Sarah asked. Her voice was suddenly all business. No. Not yet, Anna whispered. I need to see it. I need to see it for myself. I need to be absolutely sure that there is nothing left to save. Anna, he's humiliating you. Your father, my father will understand that I had to be certain, Anna interrupted. But Sarah, please, enact the contingency. Have the team on standby. Have them in the city, just in case. In the city, that's a significant move. He called me dead weight, Sarah. Anna said, the tear finally dropping onto her hand. He has no idea what he's dealing with. Let him have his night. Let him have his award. Let him have her. I'll wear the green dress. I'll be the wallpaper. And I'll watch him destroy himself. She hung up, stood, and walked to her dressing room. She looked past the green gown to the small framed photo on her vanity. It was of her and her father, standing on a balcony overlooking a sparkling ancient city. He was in full royal regalia, she in a simple white dress. The caption read, "Eldoria National Day." "Just a little longer, Papa," she whispered. "He needs to learn." The black Escalade moved through the congested Manhattan streets like a shark. Inside, the silence was thicker than the humidity. Rowan was typing furiously on his phone, his brow furrowed. Anna suspected he was texting Irina, coordinating their accidental red carpet meeting. Anna, against his wishes, wore the green dress. It was not a librarian dress. It was a custom floor-length silk gown by Madame Dubois, a reclusive Parisian artisan whose client list consisted of approximately 15 women in the world, most of whom were queens or billionaires. It was a dark forest green with no sequins, no cutouts. Its power was in its perfect minimalist structure, a dress so exquisitely cut it seemed to float around her. Rowan, whose taste ran to the gaudy labels of Valeriano and Versace, simply couldn't comprehend it. "I can't believe you wore that," he muttered as they pulled up to the curb in front of the Metropolitan Museum. The night air was electric with flashbulbs and shouting. "You'll have Irina," Anna said, her voice flat. "I'm sure she will be distracting." "Damn right," he said, not even registering her tone. He got out of the car, adjusting his custom tuxedo. He offered Anna a perfunctory hand, pulling her out onto the curb and immediately into the wall of sound. Rowan Thorne. "Over here." "Mr. Thorne, Helios Dynamics." A word for the Met set. Rowan beamed, his public face snapping into place. He was a god of industry, and this was his Olympus. He placed a hand on Anna's back, a proprietary, cold gesture for the cameras. "My wife Anna and I are just thrilled to be here," he said to Deidre Shaw, a reporter with a shark-like smile. "The Innovators Gala is doing such vital work." "Anna, you look understated," Deidre said, her eyes raking over the green dress with mild disappointment. "Rowan, everyone's talking about the H2 project. Are you really going to power all of Hong Kong?" "We're not just going to power it, Deidre. We're going to change it," Rowan said, puffing up. "Helios is the future, and the future is Rowan Darling." A voice like shattered glass cut through the din. A crimson Bentley convertible had pulled up right behind their Escalade, a flagrant breach of protocol. And out stepped Irina Sanchez. She was a vision in fire engine red. The Valeriano gown was an engineering marvel of strategically placed fabric, showcasing her surgically enhanced figure. It was backless, sleeveless, and slit to the hip. Diamonds glittered at her throat and wrists. She was, as Rowan had desired, dangerous. Rowan's hand immediately dropped from Anna's back. A slow, genuine smile spread across his face. "Irina," he breathed. The press went into a frenzy. This was the shot they wanted. The love triangle, the public power play. "Irina, over here. Who are you wearing? Irina, are you and Rowan Thorne official?" Irina sauntered over, gliding past Anna as if she were a coat check attendant. "Oh, Anna, hi," she said, a dismissive flick of her eyes. "Love the color. So earthy." She then turned and wrapped her arms around Rowan's neck, kissing him full on the mouth. It wasn't a peck. It was a long, slow, camera-ready kiss. The flashes exploded, turning the night into a strobing, agonizing whiteout. Anna stood frozen a foot away. She became invisible. The reporters, the photographers, they all turned their backs on her, creating a circle around Rowan and Irina. "Rowan, you devil," Deidre Shaw cackled. "That's a custom Valeriano, isn't it? You two are the ultimate power couple." Rowan laughed, his arm now snaked firmly around Irina's bare waist. He pulled her against his side. "She's my good luck charm," he announced to the crowd, loud enough for Anna to hear clearly. "A man needs a partner who isn't afraid of the spotlight, right?" He posed for photo after photo. Rowan and Irina. Rowan grabbing Irina's chin playfully. Irina laughing, her head thrown back. Anna was left standing on the edge of the carpet alone. The crowd simply parted around her. A security guard, seeing her abandoned, gestured vaguely. "Ma'am, are you—" "With the party. You need to move inside." Move inside. She had been erased. Her husband, in front of the entire New York media, had publicly and purposefully replaced her. Her royal training was the only thing holding her upright. Poise, her father's voice echoed in her head. A queen does not flinch. She does not tremble. She endures. And then she acts. But she was not a queen. Not here. Here she was, just Anna Vance, the discarded wife. She looked at Rowan. He caught her eye over Irina's shoulder. He wasn't apologetic. He wasn't even guilty. He gave her a small, impatient shrug, as if to say, "What did you expect?" That was the moment. The final hairline fracture that split her heart in two. The hope she'd harbored that this was a phase that the Rowan she'd married was still in there, it died. It withered on the steps of the Met under the brutal glare of the paparazzi. With a dignity she didn't feel, Anna turned her back on the scene. She held her head high and walked up the grand staircase, the green silk of her dress whispering behind her. She walked into the gala alone. Rowan didn't notice she was gone for a full 5 minutes. The great hall was a sea of glittering tables, towering floral arrangements, and the deafening roar of New York's elite. Waiters carrying trays of champagne and caviar-topped blinis navigated the designer-clad crowd. Anna secured a glass of water and found her table. Table 1. The head table. The one reserved for the visionary of the year. She saw the place cards. In the center, Mr. Rowan Thorne. To his right, Ms. Irina Sanchez. To his left, next to a junior board member, she'd never met Mrs. Anna Thorne. He hadn't just brought his mistress. He had given her the seat of honor. Anna's seat. She stood by the chair, her hand resting on its back. This was a calculated move designed to humiliate her, to push her out, to make her be the one to cause a scene by demanding her rightful place. He was trying to provoke her into being the crazy wife, so he could be the victim. She would not give him the satisfaction. She took a deep breath, picked up her own place card, Mrs. Anna Thorne, and quietly moved it. She placed it at the far end of the table between a tech journalist and an elderly philanthropist. She then took that seat her back straight and began to sip her water as if this was precisely where she was meant to be. A few moments later, Rowan arrived, flush with his red carpet victory. Irina was clinging to his arm, her red dress a slash of color in the gilded room. "Rowan, darling, they put you right in the center as you should be," Irina trilled. Rowan nodded, pleased, and then his eyes scanned the table. He saw Anna at the far end, speaking quietly with the philanthropist, Mrs. Adler. His face tightened in annoyance. He had wanted the confrontation. He had wanted her to cry, to yell, to demand Irina leave so he could sigh and tell the table, "You see what I have to deal with." Her compliance, her poise was infuriating to him. He sat pulling out the chair for Irina, who settled into Anna's spot like a queen claiming a throne. The dinner began. It was a slow-motion torture. From her vantage point, Anna had a perfect view of her husband and his mistress. She watched as Rowan placed his hand on Irina's thigh. She watched as he whispered in her ear, making her laugh a loud, abrasive bray. She watched him feed Irina a bite of his seared foie gras. The table filled with Rowan's board members and fellow tech titans pointedly ignored the dynamic. They spoke to Rowan about projections. They spoke to Irina about her brand. They did not speak to Anna at all. This was the part that hurt the most. These were people she had hosted in her home. She had planned their dinners, charmed their wives, remembered their children's names. And now, in the face of Rowan's public infidelity, they had all turned away. Because he had the power. Finally, Claire Cunningham, a rival socialite with a notoriously sharp tongue, slithered over from another table. "Anna, darling," Claire said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "You are being so incredibly brave. Just sitting there watching this. It's like a car crash. Rowan is just impossible, isn't he? And that dress on Irina. It's screaming so loud I can barely hear myself think." This was not support. It was a social attack designed to see if Anna would crack. Anna gave Claire a small, cool smile. "Claire, how kind of you to come over. I'm not being brave. I'm just enjoying the salmon. And Rowan is... Rowan. You know how he loves his vision. I find it's best to just let him focus." Claire's smile faltered, disappointed by the lack of drama. "Well, you're a better woman than I." She slinked away. Anna's composure was paper-thin. She felt the eyes of the entire room on her. They were whispering. "Look at her. She's just letting it happen. She has no self-respect." She had to get up. She needed air. "Excuse me," she murmured to Mrs. Adler. She rose and walked not to the main exit, but toward the terrace doors. Her legs felt weak. The sound of the party faded, replaced by the cool night air and the distant sound of sirens. She gripped the cold stone balustrade overlooking the park. The mask shattered. Her shoulders hitched, and a dry, silent sob escaped her. She had failed. She had tried to be a normal person, and she had been broken by a man who didn't deserve her. She'd given him her trust, her support, and through her family's fund, the very money that built his empire. And he had paid her back with this. She pulled out her phone. Her fingers trembled as she typed the text to Sarah. "It's worse than I thought. He's made his move. I'm done. Execute the protocol." A reply came back instantly. "Understood. The asset is in place. He is waiting for your signal." A new feeling pushed past the grief. It was cold, sharp, and familiar. It was the feeling of power. Not the flashy, desperate power Rowan craved, but the deep, quiet, tectonic power of her bloodline. She took one last, shuddering breath of the city air, wiping the single tear from her cheek. She reapplied her lipstick. The mask was back in place, but this time it was not the mask of a victim. It was the mask of a monarch. She turned and walked back into the ballroom, her green dress flowing behind her. She was no longer Anna Vance, the long-suffering wife. She was Ariana, Princess of Eldoria, and the party was just getting home started. Anna returned to her seat just as the salad plates were being cleared. The mood at the table had grown louder, fueled by champagne and Rowan's colossal ego. He was holding court, regaling the table with a story about his hostile takeover of a smaller competitor. "So I told him," Rowan boomed. "I said, You can either walk away with your dignity, or I can take your dignity and your company. He chose poorly. The table laughed, a chorus of sycophants. You're a shark, Rowan. A total killer. Irina purred, running a red, taloned finger down his lapel. That's why you're a visionary. And he's... well, who even remembers his name? Exactly, Rowan said, throwing back his champagne. His eyes, cold and assessing, landed on Anna at the far end of the table. That's the lesson. You have to be a killer. You have to be ruthless. You have to cut away the dead weight, the things that hold you back. Right, Anna? The entire table went silent. He was addressing her directly. This was it. Anna met his gaze. Her voice was steady, projecting perfectly to every person at the table. I've always found that sharks, Rowan, are rather predictable. All appetite, no finesse. They're impressive, I suppose, until they meet a blue whale. An animal of true, immense, and quiet power. The metaphor and the ice in her tone took him by surprise. The tech journalist began to scribble notes. Rowan's face flushed a dark, angry red. He had expected her to cower. She had instead insulted him. Irina, sensing the shift, jumped in. Oh, Anna, always with the quiet power. So boring. While you're off arranging flowers for the hospital guild, I'm helping Rowan close deals. That's real power. This dress, she gestured to her own body, has probably closed more deals tonight than your entire charity budget. That's quite possible, Anna replied, her smile never wavering. We clearly operate in very different markets, Irina. You seem to be in the business of short-term rentals. I prefer long-term investments, things that last, like heritage, and of art. The double entendre was exquisite. The elderly philanthropist Mrs. Adler choked on her water, trying to hide a laugh. Irina not bright enough to catch the nuance, but sharp enough to feel the sting was furious. You condescending little... Enough! Rowan slammed his hand on the table, rattling the silverware. The entire ballroom, it seemed, turned to look. He was losing control. She had gotten under his skin. He stood up, walked the length of the table, and loomed over her. His face was a mask of fury. Who the hell do you think you are? He hissed, his voice low and venomous. I'm your wife, Rowan, she said, still seated, forcing him to look down on her. You're nothing, he seethed. You're a nobody. You are a Vance from Boston, which means nothing. You brought nothing to this marriage. No money, no connections I couldn't get myself. You are just... there. You are a piece of decorative, obsolete, background scenery. He was projecting. He was describing himself without her. Is that so? She asked, her voice dangerously calm. Yes, that is so. He was shaking with rage. This is my night, my award. I am the visionary. And you're just the dead weight I've been talking about. Honest to God, Irina at least understands the power of this room. You're just taking up a good seat. This was it, the final public degradation. Rowan, don't, whispered the CFO David Hayes from across the table. He looked pale. Don't. What, David? Tell the truth, Rowan snarled. He then did the unforgivable. He reached down and grabbed Anna's upper arm, his fingers digging in like talons. He hauled her to her feet. Get up, he commanded. Go home. You're embarrassing me. A collective gasp went through the nearby tables. Deidre Shaw, the reporter, was already typing on her phone, her eyes wide with malicious glee. Anna looked at his hand on her arm. She looked at his twisted, angry face. She felt no fear, only a profound, cold pity. "Let go of me, Rowan," she said. "Or what?" he sneered. "You'll go write in your diary. You'll go look at your dusty paintings." "No," she said, her voice clear as a bell. "I'll make a phone call." He laughed, a short, ugly sound. "A phone call? To who? Your gardener, the hospital guild?" He shoved her hard toward the exit. "Get out! I am sick of looking at your pathetic, mousy face." Anna stumbled, catching herself on the back of a chair. The entire room was watching now. The music had stopped. She straightened her dress. She smoothed the silk on her arm where his fingers had been. She looked at him, and for the first time that night, Rowan saw something in her eyes he had never seen before. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't anger. It was authority. "As you wish," she said. She turned not toward the main exit, but toward the private corridor at the side of the stage, the one leading to the green rooms. "Where is she going?" Irina scoffed. "Probably to cry in the bathroom." "Let her," Rowan said, adjusting his tuxedo, trying to regain his composure. "The trash just took itself out." He returned to his seat, breathing heavily, but a smirk of triumph on his face. He had finally won. He had broken her. He poured himself a fresh glass of champagne. He had no idea he had just signed his own death warrant. While Anna made her exit Rowan's CFO, David Hayes leaned in his face the color of ash. "Rowan." "That was a mistake," David whispered, his eyes darting around. "It was a necessity," Rowan snapped. "She was undermining me. Now pour yourself a drink, David. We're about to be honored." "Rowan, you don't understand." David pressed his voice, strained. "I got an alert during dinner. A red flag from our equity partners." Rowan's good mood instantly vanished. What red flag? The Hong Kong deal?" "No, our primary investors, the Eldorian Sovereign Fund, the ones who hold 60% of our equity." "What about them?" Rowan said, trying to sound casual. Helios Dynamics was built on a mountain of debt, leveraged against the green technology he'd promised to deliver. His vision was in fact a high-stakes gamble. The project was over budget and months behind schedule. He had been cooking the books for the quarterly reports, hiding the burn rate, and desperately needed another round of funding. The Eldorian Fund, faceless, silent, and based in Europe, was his entire lifeline. "They've been silent for 3 months," David said, sweating. "You know we're leveraged to the hilt. The new project in the South China Sea. It's a cash bonfire. We're burning through 50 million a week. The Eldorian tranche. The next $500 million. It was due yesterday." Rowan's heart hammered. "They'll pay. It's a clerical delay. They're old-world Europeans. They move slow." "They don't move slow when it comes to interest, Rowan," David hissed. "The penalty clauses in that agreement. If they call our loan, we are insolvent. Not just the company. You. You signed a personal guarantee against the entire B round. We would be bankrupt by Tuesday." Rowan stared at him. Bankrupt. The word was absurd. He was in a $10,000 tuxedo, about to win Visionary of the Year. "Yes. Bankrupt," David confirmed. "I've been emailing their representative in Zurich all day. Nothing. Just awaiting instructions. Then 10 minutes ago I get this." He slid his phone under the table. It was a one-line email from the fund's legal counsel. "We are aware of the situation. A principal is now on site and assessing the investment viability. Do not proceed with any announcements." Rowan went cold. "A principal is on site?" "Here at this gala." "That's what it says," David whispered. Rowan's mind raced. He scanned the room, his eyes darting over the hedge, fund managers, the tech billionaires. Who was the Eldorian principal? Was it the elderly Mrs. Adler who Anna had been talking to? Was it that rival from the other table? He suddenly felt a primal gut-twisting fear. His whole empire, his entire life, was a house of cards. He'd been so focused on the social humiliation of his wife, he hadn't realized his financial humiliation was imminent. "This award," Rowan said, his voice now a strained whisper. "My speech. I have to nail it. I have to project confidence. Whoever this principal is, they need to see that I am Helios Dynamics, that I am the vision. They're here to see the king." "Rowan, I think you should be humble," David advised. "Thank the investors. Thank Anna. You just threw your wife out of the gala, man. What if this principal saw that it looks unstable?" "No," Rowan said, his arrogance reasserting itself, fueled by panic. "It shows strength. It shows I'm ruthless. That's what they invested in. I'm a shark. Remember, they need to know the shark is still hungry." He looked toward Irina, who was busy taking a selfie, pouting her lips. She was his good luck charm, his partner. But looking at her now, he saw only a shallow, expensive liability. He had hitched his wagon to her, and in doing so had just publicly alienated his quiet, stable, old money wife. Right at the moment, he might need her connections the most. He had always assumed Anna's Vance family was just comfortable. What if they weren't? What if her old money was real money? A sick feeling rose in his throat. "And now," a voice boomed from the stage, "the main event. Please welcome our host, James Calloway." Rowan stood up, his legs shaking. He had to give the speech of his life. He had to save his company. James Calloway, a charismatic news anchor, took the stage to thunderous applause. "Good evening, innovators. Tonight, we honor a man who has looked at the sun and, well, he decided to bottle it. He is the mind behind Helios Dynamics, a company that has redefined green energy. Ladies and gentlemen, the visionary of the year, Mr. Rowan Thorne." A spotlight hit their table. Rowan stood. He straightened his tie. He saw David Hayes's terrified face. He saw Irina's adoring, vacant smile. He kissed Irina, a long, possessive kiss for the cameras. It was a mark of ownership, a desperate signal of power. "This is for us," he whispered to her, then strode toward the stage. He accepted the heavy crystal award. He gripped the sides of the podium, the bright lights warming his face, and his panic began to subside, replaced by his familiar, godlike ego. He was a visionary. He was the king. That principal from the Eldorian Fund was out there, watching, and he would dazzle them. "Thank you." He began, his voice smooth as velvet. "Thank you, James. Thank you to the board. Visionary. That's a powerful word." He paused, looking out over the sea of faces. A visionary sees what others cannot. A visionary is not afraid of the future. They are not afraid to be ruthless. They are not afraid to make the hard decisions, to cut away the parts that are failing to shed the dead weight that holds them back. He was in his element now. "My company, Helios Dynamics, is the future. We are building towers of light. We are powering the world. But you don't do that by being timid." He let the word timid hang in the air. "I've had people in my life, well-meaning people, who see my ambition, and they flinch. They're afraid. I'd tell them I wanted to build a tower that touched the sky, and they'd ask me if the zoning board would approve." A ripple of knowing laughter went through the crowd. Many of them had heard him use this veiled insult against Anna before. "They'd ask me about zoning," he repeated, smiling. They'd ask me about appropriate timelines and sustainable growth. They are the wallpaper of the world, necessary, I suppose, but you never ever notice them. The camera panned to his table, focusing on the empty seat where Anna had been. Then it panned to Irina, who blew him a kiss. The future, Rowan continued, does not belong to the wallpaper. It belongs to the bold. It belongs to the fire. You need a partner in this life who understands the fight. Someone who isn't afraid to be in the spotlight, who isn't afraid to burn. Someone who sees your tower and asks you what color the penthouse will be. The crowd applauded. It was a good line. So I accept this award not just for myself, but for that spirit, the spirit of disruption, the spirit that knows when to hold on and when to let go. He was looking right at the empty chair now, a public final dismissal. My wife, Anna, she's a wonderful woman, from a different time, a time of quiet galleries and dusty books. But the world is moving fast, and I, for one, refuse to be left behind. He raised the Crystal Award. Thank you. Let's go build the future. The applause was deafening. He had done it. He had defined his own narrative. He was the ruthless visionary. Anna was the past. Irina was the future. Surely the Eldorian principal in the audience had seen that. He was a winner. He walked off stage high on adrenaline and embraced Irina, who was waiting in the wings. You were amazing, darling. Dead weight. Wallpaper. You destroyed her, Irina gushed. I just told the truth, Rowan said, feeling invincible. It was in that moment of supreme triumph that James Calloway, the host, walked back to the podium, his face pale and his hands visibly shaking. Ladies and gentlemen, Calloway stammered, reading from a card that had just been handed to him. We have an unscheduled addition to the program. A surprise guest, a patron of this institution and a significant figure in global finance. He has requested a moment to speak. Rowan and Irina paused, watching from the side of the stage. Please, Calloway said, his voice cracking, please welcome to the stage His Majesty King Theron of Eldoria. While Rowan had been delivering his speech, a very different scene had been unfolding outside. A diplomatic convoy consisting of 3 black Mercedes-Maybach sedans and 2 police escort vehicles had pulled silently into the museum's private staff entrance, far from the red carpet. The vehicles bore no license plates, only the golden diplomatic crest of the Griffin. The moment the vehicles stopped, a team of 6 men, all in sharp black suits with earpieces, exited and formed a perimeter. They were not hotel security. They were the Eldorian Royal Guard. The door of the lead car was opened by a tall man with a severe face, Gregor the King's head of security. Out stepped His Majesty King Theron of Eldoria. He was a man in his late 60s, tall, with a full head of silver hair and a trimmed white beard. He was in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, but across his chest he wore the crimson sash of the Order of the Griffin, and pinned to his lapel was the Star of the Order. This was not a man attending a party. This was a mono or solbark on state business. He looked up at the gaudy lights of the gala with an expression of profound disdain. Gregor, the king said, his voice a low, cultured rumble. Is the princess secure? Yes, your majesty. She is in the green room as requested. She has given the signal. The humiliation is complete. Good, the king said, a cold fire in his blue eyes. I gave that boy 3 years. 3 years to see the jewel he held, and he tried to trade her for glass. He will learn the difference tonight. The king and his entourage swept through the back corridors of the museum. The event staff, seeing the sash, the security, and the sheer undeniable aura of command, simply melted out of his way. They reached the private green room where Anna had gone. She stood when he entered. The mousy wife was gone. In her place stood a princess. Her back was straight, her chin was high, and her eyes were the same cold, assessing blue as her father's. "Papa," she said, inclining her head. He walked to her and kissed her forehead. "Ariana, my daughter, you have endured. I am so proud and so very angry." He put his hands on me. She whispered, the last trace of Anna surfacing. The king's eyes hardened. "I know. I watched it on the security feed. Gregor, you have your orders." "Yes, your majesty," Gregor said. "This is not just about a bad marriage, Ariana." The king continued, taking her hand. "This is about an insult to the crown. Helios Dynamics was your project, your attempt to build something good in the world. He has corrupted it, and he has humiliated you. This ends now." "What about the speech?" she asked. "What about it?" "He's about to accept his award. He's going to use the stage." A thin, dangerous smile crossed the king's face. "Excellent. Let him climb as high as he can. It will make the fall so much more visionary." He turned to his equerry. "It is time. Inform the host." The equerry nodded and slipped out of the room. He found James Calloway, just as Rowan was walking off stage, high on his own applause. "Mr. Calloway," the equerry said, flashing diplomatic credentials. "Who?" "What, I'm busy," Calloway said, flustered. "You will listen. His Majesty King Theron of Eldoria is here. He is a principal patron of this museum, and he is the primary stakeholder in tonight's visionary company. He will be speaking next." Calloway's blood ran cold. King Theron, the reclusive, absurdly wealthy monarch whose nation was essentially a private sovereign bank. Here. He's not on the list. "He is now," the equerry said. "Announce him." Calloway, looking at the royal guard flanking the corridor, nearly fainted. He stumbled back to the podium, his heart pounding, and made the announcement that silenced the room. The silence in the ballroom was absolute. You could hear the ice melting in 1,000 glasses. King Theron of Eldoria. Here. Rowan and Irina, standing in the wings, froze. Rowan's face went white. "Eldoria," he whispered. "Eldorian Sovereign Fund." "What?" Irina said, annoyed. "Who is that?" "He interrupted your moment." "Shut up, Irina." Rowan hissed, his entire body trembling. "Just shut up." King Theron walked onto the stage. He didn't hurry. He moved with a measured, regal pace that commanded the entire space. He adjusted the microphone, his eyes sweeping the shocked, upturned faces of New York's elite. "Good evening." His voice boomed, rich with a slight, unplaceable European accent. "I apologize for interrupting your celebration. I am not, as a rule, a fan of galas. I am here tonight for 2 reasons. 1, as a patron, and 2, as a father." A confused murmur rippled through the crowd. The king's eyes found Rowan, who was paralyzed by the side of the stage. "Mr. Rowan Thorne," the king called out. The spotlight, which had been on the podium, swung to find Rowan pinning him like a frightened animal. "Mr. Thorne," the king continued, his voice laced with contempt. "A visionary, a shark, a killer. These are the words you use to describe yourself. Your speech was very passionate. You spoke of vision, but it seems your vision is critically limited. You failed to see what was right in front of you. Rowan was suffocating. No, you spoke of your wife, the king said, his voice rising in anger. You called her wallpaper. You called her dead weight. You dismissed her as a Vance from Boston. The king paused. Allow me to correct the record. Her name is not Anna Vance. That is a name she took in your country to live a simple life, to find a man who might love her for her heart and not her station. He turned and gestured to the wings opposite where Rowan was standing. Allow me to introduce my daughter. Anna walked onto the stage. The green dress, which Rowan had called boring, now looked under the stage lights like it was spun from emeralds. She was no longer hunched in humiliation. She stood tall, her posture perfect, her face serene and powerful. She looked in every way like what she was. This, the king announced, his voice echoing in the stunned silence, is Her Royal Highness, Princess Ariana of Eldoria. A collective shattering gasp filled the room. Deidre Shaw, the reporter, dropped her phone. David Hayes, the CFO, looked like he was having a heart attack. Irina's jaw went slack, her painted red mouth forming a perfect O of horror. Rowan simply shook his head, muttering, No, that's a lie. That's impossible. You belittled her, the king thundered, pointing a finger at Rowan. You humiliated her. You put your hands on her. You did this in a room full of people, unaware that my people were also watching. You spoke of dead weight, Mr. Thorne. The king continued, his voice dropping to a dangerous icy level. Let me be clear. The only dead weight in your life was your company, Helios Dynamics, a company my daughter, Princess Ariana, personally advocated for. The king walked to the center of the stage. You have been sending your falsified optimistic reports to an anonymous fund in Zurich. Mr. Thorne, that fund is Eldoria, and Eldoria is me. He looked at Anna. No, that is incorrect. It is her. Anna stepped forward to the microphone. Her voice, no longer mousy or timid, rang out with the clarity of a crystal bell. Rowan, she said. The entire room hung on her every word. The Eldorian Sovereign Fund, which owns 60% of Helios Dynamics, is me. I am the chair of the board. I am the principal you've been waiting for. I am your investor. I am your boss. Rowan Thorne's legs gave out. He physically collapsed against the stage wall, sliding to the floor. Bankrupt, he choked out. Bankrupt. 60%. Irina whispered, her eyes wide with greedy, horrified calculation. She's a billionaire. A princess. Anna's eyes swept the room. I wanted a marriage, Rowan, not a merger. I wanted a partner who saw me not a title or a bank account. I see now that was a mistake. You were right about one thing. You do need a killer partner. She gave him a cold, devastating smile. And you had one. You just never realized it. The ballroom was in chaos. The press, who had been cordoned off, broke through the velvet ropes. Cameras flashed not at the stage, but at the crumpled heap that was Rowan Thorne and the horror-struck visage of Irina Sanchez. Mr. Thorne, is it true? Are you bankrupt? Princess Ariana, Princess Ariana. On stage, Anna continued, her voice cutting through the noise. Effective immediately, the board of Helios Dynamics, my board, has called an emergency session. You, Rowan, are suspended as CEO, pending a full and independent forensic audit into your expenditures and your projections." She looked pointedly at Irina, who was still frozen in her crimson dress. "A full audit, including all corporate apartments, all travel and all consulting fees paid in the last 12 months. Irina finally understood. She wasn't just losing a billionaire boyfriend. She was now implicated in his fraud. The vision Rowan had been selling was a lie, and the money he'd been spending on her was Anna's. Panicked Irina did the only thing she knew how. She scrambled for the new source of power. "Anna!" she cried, stumbling toward the stage. "Princess, princess! Oh my God! I had no idea. He told me you were... He told me you two were separated. He told me you were nobody. I'm a victim in this too." She tried to climb the small stairs to the stage. Gregor, the king's head of security, simply stepped in her path. A wall of unmoving muscle. Anna looked down at the weeping, desperate socialite, the woman who an hour ago had called her boring and earthy. "Leave," Anna said, her voice quiet, but carrying the unmistakable weight of a royal command. Irina stopped, her face a grotesque mask of tears and melting makeup. But, we could be partners. I have a brand I can... Leave," Anna repeated, turning her back. Irina, humiliated beyond recovery, let out a wail, turned and fled the ballroom, her red dress trailing behind her like a streak of blood. The cameras turned back to Rowan. He was on his hands and knees, trying to stand. "Anna, Anna," he begged, crawling toward the stage. "Honey, princess, wait. We can fix this. It was a misunderstanding. I love you. I've always loved you. I was stressed. The business, it was all for you." He reached the edge of the stage, his hands gripping the carpet. He looked up, his face destroyed by panic and pathetic pleading tears. Anna looked down at him. The man she had once loved. The man who had called her dead weight. "You didn't love me, Rowan," she said, her voice devoid of all emotion. "You loved the idea of me. And when that idea wasn't useful, you tried to destroy it. You didn't destroy me. You just revealed yourself." "No. Please. Ariana." "I'll do anything. Don't take the company. It's my life." "No," Anna said. "It was my money. Your life. Rowan is whatever you can build without it." She turned to her father. "Papa, I'm ready to go home." "As you wish, Your Highness," King Theron said, offering her his arm. They walked off the stage together, a portrait of regal, absolute power. The royal guard formed a perfect circle around them, parting the sea of reporters and stunned guests. They exited through the same private door they'd entered, leaving the chaos behind. Rowan Thorne was left alone on the floor, the bright hot lights of the cameras blinding him. His Visionary of the Year award lay forgotten on the floor a few feet away, a shard of meaningless crystal. He had flown too close to the sun, and he had just been burned to ash. The last thing he saw before the security guards physically hauled him out of the ballroom was his CFO, David Hayes, already on the phone with the company's lawyers, his face grim. The shark had met the whale, and the whale had won. Anna and her father emerged into the cool night air. The Maybach was waiting its door open. As she got in, her assistant, Sarah, was waiting inside with a glass of water and a warm blanket. "It is done, Your Highness," Sarah said gently. Anna nodded, leaning her head back against the plush leather. She closed her eyes. She was not Anna Vance, the quiet wife. She was not Ariana, the avenging princess. She was, for the first time in 3 years, just free. "Take us to the airfield, Gregor," the king commanded. "The jet is waiting. We're going home." The car pulled silently away from the curb, leaving the circus of the gala, the flashes of the cameras, and the ruin of Rowan Thorn behind. What happens when arrogance and ambition collide with true hidden power, the story of Rowan Thorn and Princess Ariana, is a brutal modern-day fable. Rowan, blinded by his own ego, saw women as accessories, either a quiet wallpaper wife or a flashy trophy mistress. He never thought to look deeper. He never realized that the dead weight he so cruelly discarded was in fact the very hand holding him up. Ariana's revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't a slap or a scream. It was a cold, calculated and complete dismantling of the empire he loved more than any person. She didn't just take his company. She took his name, his reputation, and his future all in one devastating reveal. Rowan learned the hard way. True power doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need a red dress or a crystal award. True power just is, and it always wins. Thank you for watching our story. If you were as gripped by Ariana's ultimate triumph as we were, we need your help. Please hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to see karma delivered, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to ring the bell so you never miss a single story of justice and revenge. A perfect marriage, a multi-million-dollar home, a baby on the way after years of heartbreaking struggle. Sarah Johnson had everything she'd ever dreamed of. The baby shower was the pinnacle of her joy, a room filled with pastel balloons and adoring friends. But when she held up a tiny pair of hand-knitted booties, her husband Mark leaned in close, and with a smile on his face he whispered 6 words that would detonate her entire world. He thought no one else heard. He thought he was in control. What he didn't know was that Sarah had a secret of her own, a secret contained in a single email that would expose his web of lies to millions before sunrise. The late afternoon sun, the color of warm honey, spilled across the manicured lawns of North Scottsdale, Arizona. It was the kind of light that made everything look expensive, from the terracotta roof tiles of the sprawling Tuscan-style homes to the diamonds that glittered on the fingers of the women arriving at 1284 Desert Bloom Lane. This was the home of Mark and Sarah Johnson, and today was a day meticulously curated for Joy, their baby shower. To any outside observer, Sarah Johnson was the living embodiment of a dream fulfilled. At 34, she possessed a quiet, graceful beauty, high cheekbones, warm hazel eyes, and a cascade of chestnut hair that fell in soft waves around her shoulders. But today, her most prominent feature was the perfect round swell of her belly, showcased in a flowing, cream-colored empire waist dress. After 6 years of a silent, gnawing battle with infertility, the hushed appointments, the cyclical heartbreak, the invasive procedures that felt like a violation of body and soul, Sarah was finally miraculously pregnant. Her husband Mark was the other half of the perfect picture, handsome in that effortless old-money way with a thatch of sandy blonde hair, a charmingly crooked smile, and the easy confidence of a man who had never known failure. As a partner at a successful private equity firm, he provided a life that was not just comfortable, but opulent. The house, the cars, the European vacations, he showered her with them all. He had been her rock through their fertility struggles, holding her hand during every negative test, his voice a soothing balm of reassurance. "It'll happen for us, Sarah Bear," he'd murmur into her hair. "I know it will." And it had. This pregnancy felt like the final triumphant piece of their puzzle. The baby, a girl they planned to name Isabella, was more than just a child. She was a testament to their love and perseverance. The baby shower was a reflection of Mark's grand gesture style of affection. No detail had been overlooked. A string quartet played softly on the flagstone patio. A caterer, poached from a Michelin-starred restaurant, served delicate hors d'oeuvres. A floral archway of white roses and baby's breath framed the entrance, and inside the great room was a sea of blush pink, gold, and cream. A mountain of perfectly wrapped gifts sat beside a custom-built rocking chair, a single enormous teddy bear nestled in its seat. Sarah moved through the crowd of 50 women, a practiced smile gracing her lips. She accepted congratulations, touched outstretched hands, and answered the same questions on repeat. "Yes, I'm feeling wonderful. Just a few more weeks. No, the nursery is all done. Mark finished it last weekend." Each sentence felt true and false at the same time. She was grateful, overwhelmingly so. But beneath the placid surface of her joy, a strange and unwelcome current of anxiety had been pulling at her for months. It was a formless, nameless dread. She couldn't articulate a feeling she dismissed as standard third trimester jitters. But it was more than that. It was a collection of small, dissonant moments that didn't quite harmonize with the perfect symphony of her life. There was the way Mark's phone, once casually left on the kitchen counter, was now perpetually glued to his hand, its screen angled away from her. There were the late nights at the office that seemed to coincide with a new, faintly floral scent on his suit jackets. There were the hushed, clipped phone calls he'd take in his study. The door firmly closed, his voice low and urgent. When she'd ask, he'd just smile, that disarming smile. "Just a sensitive deal, honey. You know how it is. NDAs and all that." Her sister Jessica saw it too. Jessica was 2 years younger, a paralegal with a razor-sharp mind and a protective instinct that was downright feral when it came to Sarah. She was the pragmatist to Sarah's dreamer. "I don't know, sir," Jessica had said, over coffee the week before, her brow furrowed. "He just seems slick. Too slick. It's like he's playing a part. The perfect husband, the doting father-to-be." "Jess, please." Sarah had sighed, placing a hand on her belly. "He's just excited. He's been amazing. He designed the entire nursery himself." "He paid a designer, Sarah." Jessica had countered her tone, gentle but firm. "There's a difference." Even Sarah's best friend Emily, a bubbly and optimistic kindergarten teacher, had dropped a strange comment. "It's so sweet how Mark is with you," she'd said. "But have you ever had a real screaming fight with him? I mean, a proper one?" Sarah had paused, and in that pause she realized they hadn't. In 6 years of marriage, through the gut-wrenching lows of infertility, Mark had never raised his voice. He'd been patient, understanding almost, unnaturally calm. His composure, once a source of comfort, now felt like a wall she could never quite see, let alone scale. The most jarring incident had happened 3 weeks ago. She'd been looking for a specific financial document in Mark's home office, a space he usually kept locked. She found the door ajar and slipped inside. In an unlocked drawer of his antique mahogany desk, nestled beneath a stack of old stock certificates, was a folder. It wasn't the folder that caught her eye, but the single sheet of paper inside. It was a receipt from a high-end jeweler, dated 2 months prior. The purchase, a diamond tennis bracelet, A very, very expensive diamond tennis bracelet. It wasn't for her. Her birthday and their anniversary had long passed. Christmas was months away. She had never received it. A cold dread, sharp and specific, had washed over her. She'd quietly closed the drawer, her heart hammering against her ribs. She told herself there was a logical explanation, a gift for his mother, perhaps, or an investment. But she couldn't bring herself to ask him about it. To ask would be to admit the crack in their perfect facade, and she was terrified of what might crawl out. So she pushed it down, burying the unease beneath layers of excitement for Isabella. She focused on the miracle growing inside her, the flutter of kicks and hiccups that felt like the only real things in her world. This baby was her anchor, her truth. Now at the shower, surrounded by the trappings of her perfect life, the anxiety was back, a low hum beneath the cheerful chatter. She watched Mark work the room, schmoozing with her friends' mothers, clapping his best friend David on the back and flashing his perfect smile. He looked every bit the proud father-to-be. But his eyes, when they occasionally met hers across the crowded room, seemed distant. There was warmth in them, but it felt like the curated warmth of a showroom fireplace, all light, no heat. Mark's mother, Eleanor, a woman who seemed to be sculpted from ice and disapproval, glided over to Sarah. Her silver hair was coiffed into a helmet of perfection, and her eyes, a pale, chilly blue, scanned Sarah from head to toe. "Sarah, dear," she began, her voice crisp. "You look substantial. You must be careful not to overdo it. The baby needs nutrients, not excess." "Hello, Eleanor. I'm feeling fine, thank you," Sarah replied, her smile tightening. "I do hope you're planning on breastfeeding. The Johnson men have always been robust, and it starts with the right foundation. Formula is just a shortcut for the uncommitted." Every word was a perfectly polished dart. For years, Sarah had endured Eleanor's passive-aggressive critiques, her thinly veiled disappointment that her son had married a woman from a middle-class background, a woman who had until now failed in her primary duty of providing an heir. "We'll do what's best for the baby," Sarah said, her voice betraying a slight tremor. Eleanor gave a tight, condescending smile and drifted away, leaving a chill in her wake. Sarah took a deep breath, her hand instinctively going to her belly. "It's okay, Isabella," she thought. "Just a little while longer." Soon it was time for the main event, the opening of the gifts. The guests gathered in a semicircle around Sarah's designated throne, the plush rocking chair. Emily and Jessica sat on the floor at her feet, tasked with handing her the presents and collecting the ribbons. Mark stood behind the chair, his hands resting on Sarah's shoulders. It was an intimate, possessive gesture meant for public consumption. He squeezed gently. "Ready for this, sweetheart?" he murmured, his breath warm against her ear. She nodded, forcing another smile. "Ready." The gifts were a parade of adorable excess. A cashmere baby blanket from Tiffany's, a miniature Burberry trench coat, a sterling silver rattle from a distant aunt. With each gift, Sarah cooed and exclaimed the perfect picture of maternal bliss. The women applauded, their faces glowing with vicarious joy. Emily handed her a small, simply wrapped box. "This one's from my mom," she whispered. Sarah carefully undid the ribbon and lifted the lid. Inside, nestled in white tissue paper, were the tiniest pair of hand-knitted booties she had ever seen. They were a soft, buttery yellow, with minuscule pearl buttons. They were so delicate, so full of love and care, that a genuine, unbidden wave of emotion washed over Sarah. This was real. This felt real. She held one up for everyone to see, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Oh, they're perfect," she whispered, her voice thick. A collective awe rippled through the room. It was in that moment, that single pure moment of unguarded emotion, that Mark chose to lean in. The string quartet was in the middle of a delicate crescendo. The guests were captivated by the sight of the glowing mother-to-be. No one was paying attention to the husband whispering in her ear. His voice was a low, conspiratorial murmur, meant only for her. It was casual, almost bored. "Don't get too attached," he breathed, his lips brushing her temple. "Remember, she's just the surrogate." The 6 words did not register at first. They were a foreign language, a jumble of sounds that her brain refused to assemble into coherent thought. "She's just the surrogate." The phrase hung in the air between them, invisible and yet more solid than the chair she was sitting on. Surrogate. The word was a bomb, but a silent one. The world around her didn't explode. The string quartet continued its jaunty tune. The women kept smiling, their eyes fixed on the tiny yellow booty still held aloft in her trembling hand. The afternoon sun still streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Nothing had changed, and yet everything had been irrevocably destroyed. A high-pitched ringing started in Sarah's ears, drowning out the music. The vibrant colors of the room, the blush pink, the shimmering gold, bled together into a nauseating muted gray. The smiling faces of her friends and family distorted their features, melting like wax figures left too close to a flame. She felt Mark's hands, which had been a symbol of support just seconds before, as 2 burning brands on her shoulders. His touch was suddenly vile, a proprietary claim on a vessel not a wife. Her breath hitched. The air in her lungs turned to glass shards. She couldn't inhale, couldn't exhale. The tiny, perfect booty slipped from her fingers and fell to the plush rug unnoticed by anyone but her. She swiveled her head slowly, a fraction of an inch at a time, to look up at her husband. Mark was still smiling, a placid, handsome mask that betrayed nothing. He was looking out at the guests, nodding as if in appreciation of their adoration. He had said it so casually, so dismissively, as if commenting on the weather. As if he were reminding her of a mundane, agreed-upon fact. She's just the surrogate. The implication was a physical blow. This baby, her Isabella, the child she felt kicking and turning inside her, the culmination of years of pain and hope, was not hers. Her body was just a container, an incubator for hire. And he knew. He had always known. The infertility, the struggle, their shared journey. All of it had been a lie, a performance. A single hot tear escaped her right eye and traced a path through her carefully applied makeup. It felt like acid on her skin. Mark, sensing the sudden rigidity in her shoulders, glanced down. His smile faltered for a microsecond as he saw her face, the drained color, the wide, unblinking horror in her eyes. He gave her shoulder a little shake, a silent, urgent command to pull herself together. But it was too late. Jessica, ever watchful, had seen the exchange. She hadn't heard the words, but she saw the whisper, and she saw the light go out in her sister's eyes. "Sir," Jessica's voice cut through the fog. "Sarah, are you okay?" The room's cheerful chatter faltered. A few heads turned. The spell was broken. Sarah wasn't the glowing mother-to-be anymore. She was a statue, carved from ice, her face a kabuki mask of shock. "Sarah, honey, what's wrong?" Emily asked, her brow crinkling with concern as she reached out to touch her friend's knee. Sarah flinched away from the touch as if she'd been burned. She couldn't speak. Her throat was closed tight, strangled by a truth so monstrous it had no words. She stared straight ahead, her eyes fixed on the giant mocking teddy bear in the corner. Its button eyes seemed to stare back with a vacant, idiotic pity. Mark recovered quickly, his corporate training in crisis management kicking in. He forced a hearty laugh, the sound of it grotesquely loud in the suddenly quiet room. "Oh, sweetheart," he said, his voice booming with false bonhomie. He squeezed her shoulders again, harder this time. "She's just overwhelmed. All this love, it's a lot to take in, isn't it? My emotional little Sarah bear." He was gaslighting her, in real time, in front of 50 witnesses. He was painting her as hysterical, fragile, and overwrought, a narrative he had probably been carefully crafting for years. But the words had unlocked something in Sarah. The formless dread she'd been feeling for months now had a name and a face. It was the face of her husband, the receipt for the diamond bracelet, the hushed phone calls, the unnatural calm. It wasn't anxiety. It was instinct. A primal, cellular knowledge that she was in danger. She found her voice. It came out as a choked, ragged whisper. "What did you say?" she asked, not looking at him but at the empty space in front of her. "What, honey?" Mark's tone was all loving concern. "I said you're overwhelmed with love. We all are." "No," she said, her voice gaining a sliver of strength. She finally turned her head, craning her neck to look up at him. The mask of the perfect husband was still there, but she could see the frantic panic in his eyes, the desperate plea for her to play along. "That's not what you said." The guests were murmuring now, exchanging confused, worried glances. The string quartet had trailed off into an awkward silence. The caterers froze in the doorway, their silver trays held aloft. The party had ground to a halt. "Sarah, you're making a scene." Mark hissed his lips, barely moving. His smile now a rigid, terrifying grimace. His mother Eleanor began to move toward them, her face a thundercloud of indignation. "What is the meaning of this, Sarah? If you're not feeling well, perhaps you should go lie down. You're upsetting the guests." Eleanor's voice, so full of condescension, was the final spark. It ignited the fury that had been smoldering beneath Sarah's shock. This was it. This was the game. They would all dismiss her, pathologize her, and lock her away with her female emotions, while the devastating truth remained his secret. Slowly, deliberately, Sarah pushed his hands off her shoulders. The simple act of defiance felt monumental. She used the arms of the rocking chair to push herself to her feet. The room went dead silent. Every eye was on her. She stood there for a moment, swaying slightly, her hand protectively on her stomach. She looked from Mark's panicked face to Eleanor's furious one, then out at the sea of bewildered guests. These people had come to celebrate her baby. "Her baby," he said. Sarah announced, her voice trembling, but carrying across the cavernous room with shocking clarity that I shouldn't get too attached. A collective gasp went through the room. She locked eyes with Mark. The handsome mask was gone. All that remained was raw, cornered fear. "He whispered to me," she continued, her voice rising with each word, fueled by a righteous white-hot rage, "that this baby, my baby, isn't mine. He told me she's just the surrogate." The silence that followed was absolute, profound, and terrifying. It was the silence of a universe collapsing. The 50 women stood frozen, their mouths agape. Eleanor Johnson looked as though she had been slapped. Jessica was already on her feet, her face a mask of pure murderous fury, taking a protective step toward her sister. Mark opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked like a fish gasping for air. "Sarah, that's a joke. A terrible, horrible joke, a misunderstanding. Was the diamond bracelet for the surrogate a joke too?" Sarah shot back, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. Mark went pale. He had no idea she knew. The party was over. The flawless facade had not just cracked. It had been dynamited. People started to back away, grabbing their purses, avoiding eye contact, as if the raw, ugly truth was contagious. The celebration had curdled into a public spectacle of humiliation. Whispers erupted, hushed and frantic. "Did you hear? Surrogate! Oh my God, that poor woman!" In the chaos of guests trying to make a quiet exit, Mark grabbed Sarah's arm. "We need to talk," he snarled, his voice a venomous undertone. "Upstairs, now! Don't you touch her!" Jessica spat, stepping between them. But Sarah just looked at him, her gaze eerily calm. The shock had burned away, leaving behind a cold, hard clarity. This was not a man to talk to. This was not a marriage to be saved. This was a crime scene, and she was standing right in the middle of it. "I think you've said everything that needs to be said," she said, her voice devoid of all emotion. She turned her back on him on the ruins of her party and walked toward the grand staircase, her hand never leaving her baby. She didn't know where she was going, only that she had to get away from the man whose whisper had just revealed him to be a monster. The night was just beginning, and she had one last secret to reveal. The grand staircase felt like a mountain. Each step was a monumental effort, her legs trembling, her body weighed down, not just by the baby, but by the crushing gravity of her new reality. The hushed, frantic sounds of the dying party faded behind her as she reached the second-floor landing. She didn't go to their master bedroom. His bedroom, she now thought, a space that suddenly felt contaminated. Instead, she walked on autopilot down the hall and pushed open the door to the nursery. The room was a masterpiece of manufactured love. The walls were painted a soft, dreamy lavender. A white crib with pristine linens stood against one wall. A mobile of fluffy, smiling clouds hung above it. The shelves were lined with classic children's books, their spines unbroken. Mark had presented the finished room to her a week ago, with a flourish, and she had cried with happiness. Now the sight of it was a visceral torment. Every perfect detail was a brushstroke in an elaborate, cruel lie. She sank into the plush glider in the corner, the one she had imagined spending countless nights in nursing her daughter. The silence of the room was absolute, a stark contrast to the chaos downstairs and the raging storm inside her head. Surrogate. The word echoed in the stillness. It meant another woman's egg. It meant her entire journey, the shots, the hormones, the hope was a sham. She hadn't been a partner in creation. She had been a vessel for rent, and she hadn't even known she was for hire. Her phone buzzed in the small clutch purse she'd left on the changing table. Then again, and again. A frantic chorus of texts from Emily, from her mother, from a dozen other friends who had fled the party. Emily. "Sarah, are you okay? I'm so sorry. Call me. I'll come get you. Get you. Mum, Jessica just called me. I'm on my way. Don't be alone with him. Jessica. I'm downstairs making sure he doesn't follow you. Lock your door. I'm handling this. Handling this. How could anyone handle this? This wasn't a problem to be solved. It was an apocalypse. The nursery door opened. Mark stood there, his tie loosened, his face pale and slick with sweat. He had shed the skin of the charming host, and now wore the desperate face of a man whose scheme had just spectacularly imploded. "Sarah," he began, his voice low and pleading. "Baby, you have to listen to me. It was a joke. The worst, most idiotic joke in human history. I am so sorry." Sarah stared at him, her expression utterly blank. The man she thought she had married was gone. In his place was a stranger, a con artist. "A joke," she repeated, her voice flat. "You whispered that in my ear at our baby shower in front of all our friends, and you're calling it a joke. I was drunk, I was stupid. I don't know why I said it," he insisted, taking a step into the room. "You know how my mother gets all that pressure about the baby. It came out. It meant nothing." He tried for a smile, a pathetic, wobbling thing. "Look at this room, Sarah. Look at everything I've given you, given us. Does this look like the work of a man who doesn't love you, who doesn't want this baby with you?" His words, meant to be reassuring, were gasoline on the fire. He was using the very props of his deception as proof of his innocence. He thought she was that naive, that weak, that stupid. And that's when the memory, sharp and electrifying, pierced through the fog of her pain. It was a memory from a week ago, a moment of proactive suspicion she had almost managed to convince herself was paranoia. After finding the jeweler's receipt, a seed of distrust had taken root. On a whim, fueled by a late-night internet search, she had concocted a plan. She told Mark her obstetrician had recommended an advanced, non-invasive prenatal screening that required a DNA sample from both parents to check for rare genetic disorders. She bought a commercial DNA testing kit online. He'd swabbed his cheek without a second thought, too arrogant to ever suspect her. "Anything for our little Isabella," he'd said, handing the sample back to her. She had sent his sample and her own to the lab, paying for the expedited peace of mind results. The email had arrived 3 days ago. The subject line, "Your paternity test results are ready." She had been too terrified to open it. She told herself she was being crazy, that she didn't want to poison the last few weeks of her pregnancy with unfounded suspicions. So she had left it there, a digital Pandora's box, sitting unopened in her inbox. Until now. His whisper wasn't a joke. It was the truth slipping out in a moment of unguarded arrogance. And she had the proof. While Mark continued his frantic, desperate monologue about his stupid mistake, Sarah calmly reached for her purse, her movements slow and deliberate. She pulled out her phone. Her hands were shaking, but her purpose was a steel rod in her spine. "What are you doing?" he asked, his pleading tone sharpening with alarm. She ignored him. With a tap, she opened her email client. There it was. That terrifying subject line. She tapped again, her heart hammering. The login page appeared. She entered her credentials, her thumb hovering over the Enter button. Sarah put the phone down. Mark commanded, his voice changing, a hard edge of menace creeping in. "This is not the time to be calling your mother or your sister. This is between us. We can fix this." "There is no us," she said, her voice a low, dangerous thing she didn't recognize as her own. She looked up from the screen and met his eyes. "There is no we. There is only the lie you have been living and the woman you have been using." She pressed Enter. The web page loaded. A PDF icon sat in the middle of the screen. Case ID 774 P2 8B. Participants: Sarah Johnson, alleged mother. Mark Johnson, alleged father. Her eyes scanned the document past the scientific jargon to the final damning conclusion at the bottom of the page. Analysis and conclusion. The alleged father, Mark Johnson, is excluded as the biological father of the fetus. Probability of paternity %0. The number was a black hole. It sucked all the air, all the light, all the hope from the universe. It was the ultimate irrefutable truth. This baby, her baby, was not his. Which meant his whisper wasn't just cruel. It was a piece of a puzzle she couldn't yet see. If he wasn't the father, then what was this? Who was she carrying? A new, more terrifying thought emerged. If he wasn't the father, and he knew it, then he must have known who was. And he had lied, putting another man's child inside her body. The violation was so profound, so complete, it stole her breath. Mark saw the look on her face. He saw the finality in her eyes. The game was up. He lunged for the phone. "Give me that." But Sarah was faster. She scrambled backwards out of his reach, a primal scream building in her chest. This monster, this liar, was not going to silence her. He was not going to bury this. The world deserved to know who he was. Her fingers flew across the screen, her social media muscle memory taking over. She didn't think she just acted. She opened Instagram. She had over 2,000 followers, a mix of real-life friends and acquaintances from their affluent social circle. She pressed the Go Live button. Her face, tear-streaked and pale, filled the screen. The view counter started ticking up immediately. 10, 45, 97. "Sarah, what the hell are you doing? Stop it!" Mark roared, trapped on the other side of the crib. "Hello, everyone," she said into the phone, her voice shaking but clear. The live comments started to flood in a cascade of question marks and concerned emojis. "Most of you were just at my baby shower," she continued, panning the camera around to show the perfect, beautiful, hateful nursery. "You were here to celebrate with me and my husband, Mark." She flipped the camera to face him. He froze, caught in the digital headlights, his face a mask of rage and terror. "A little while ago," she said, flipping the camera back to herself, "my husband whispered something to me. He told me not to get too attached to this baby." Her voice broke, and she took a ragged breath. The view count had passed 500. Friends were sharing the link. A brush fire was starting. "He told me that I'm just the surrogate." She held up the phone to show the email on her laptop screen, zooming in on the bold black letters. Probability of paternity 0%. "It turns out he was telling the truth about one thing," she said, her voice now dripping with a chilling, icy calm. "I am a surrogate. What he failed to mention was that I was an unwitting one. This man, my husband, put another man's child inside me, without my knowledge or consent. He is not the father. And I have no idea who is." She ended the broadcast. The silence in the room was deafening. Mark just stared at her, his mouth agape, his face ashen. He had been so sure of his control, so confident in his lies. He never imagined that the quiet, gentle woman he had so carefully selected as his pawn would have the audacity to light the whole board on fire. The night of reckoning was here, and the DNA results had just gone viral. The digital world ignites with an immediacy that is both terrifying and absolute. Sarah's 12-minute live video didn't just start a brush fire. It launched a nuclear missile into the heart of their curated lives. Before she had even caught her breath, her phone began to vibrate uncontrollably, a solid buzzing brick of notifications. It was as if the entire world was trying to reach her at once. The video was screen recorded within seconds by hundreds of viewers. It was shared on Twitter, on Facebook, on TikTok. The hashtags started trending within the hour. #surrogate scandal, Mark the monster, #justice for Sarah, #DNA bomb. By midnight, it was the lead story on local news blogs in Phoenix. By sunrise, it had been picked up by national outlets like BuzzFeed, the Daily Mail, and even some mainstream news networks who framed it as a horrifying cautionary tale of modern marriage and technological betrayal. Sarah saw none of this at first. In the immediate aftermath of the broadcast, she simply stood in the nursery, her phone clutched in her hand, watching the color drain from Mark's face. His rage had evaporated, replaced by a dawning, abject terror. He wasn't looking at her anymore. He was looking at the ghost of his future, a future that was now a smoldering crater. "You have no idea what you've done," he whispered, his voice hoarse. It wasn't a threat. It was a statement of fact. Jessica burst into the room, then her own phone in hand, her face pale. "Sir, what did you do?" "My phone is blowing up. People are... My God!" She saw Mark, and her expression hardened into pure steel. "Get out!" she snarled at him. "Get out of this house right now!" For once, Mark didn't argue. He stumbled past them like a zombie, his eyes vacant. He didn't pack a bag. He didn't grab his keys. He just walked down the stairs and out the front door into the cool desert night, a man suddenly stripped of his identity, his home, and his carefully constructed reality. The next few days were a blur of chaos contained within the four walls of the house. Sarah's mother arrived a whirlwind of comforting arms and furious tears. Jessica became her sister's Praetorian guard, fielding calls, changing Sarah's phone number, and speaking in clipped, efficient tones to the security company they hired to sit in a discreet vehicle at the end of their driveway. The media had found their address. News vans were parked down the street, and reporters with telephoto lenses were trying to get a shot of the wronged wife. The digital firestorm had real-world consequences that were swift and brutal. Mark's private equity firm, a bastion of old-school conservatism and public image, placed him on indefinite administrative leave less than 24 hours after the video went viral. They released a terse statement about taking allegations of personal misconduct seriously, a corporate maneuver designed to sever the limb before the poison spread. Mark's best friend, David, the one who had clapped him on the back at the shower, stopped answering his calls. The social invitations that had once filled their calendar vanished. They were excommunicated from the world they had so desperately courted. Eleanor Johnson, predictably, went on the attack. She gave an exclusive interview to a notoriously salacious tabloid, painting Sarah as an unstable gold-digging opportunist. Sarah was always fragile. Eleanor claimed her face a mask of feigned concern. Mark loved her, but she was difficult, prone to fantasy. This whole story is a fabrication. A desperate attempt to ruin my son after he discovered her infidelity. The DNA test is clearly a forgery. She is mentally unwell, and we are deeply concerned for the safety of the unborn child she is carrying. The narrative was vile, but it gained traction in the darker corners of the internet, where misogyny thrived. For every message of support Sarah received, there was another calling her a liar, a psycho, an attention seeker. She was forced to delete her social media accounts, but the poison was already in the water supply. It was during a late-night conversation, huddled in the living room with Jessica and their mother, that the true, horrifying scope of the situation began to dawn on Sarah. Okay, let's just think Jessica said, a legal pad on her lap, trying to impose order on the chaos. Forget the noise. Let's focus on the facts. Fact 1. Mark is not the biological father. Fact 2. He knew this. Fact 3. He orchestrated this pregnancy with you under false pretenses. The question is, why and who? Sarah whispered, her hand resting on her stomach. Who is the biological father? And where did the egg come from? Is there another woman out there? Another mother? The thought made her feel sick. Was she just an instrument in a custody battle between two other people? This isn't just infidelity, Sarah, Jessica said, her paralegal mind clicking into gear. This is, I don't even know what this is, fraud assault. There are so many layers of violation here. The first break came a week after the shower. A registered letter arrived sent from a prestigious downtown law firm. It was a cease and desist letter on behalf of Mark Johnson. It demanded Sarah retract her defamatory and libelous statements and issue a public apology citing the damage to his reputation and career. It was a standard legal threat, an act of blustering intimidation. But it was the final sentence that made Jessica's blood run cold. Failure to comply, she read aloud, will result in our client pursuing all available legal avenues to protect his parental rights to the unborn child. Parental rights, Sarah choked out. He has zero biological connection. The test proved it. It doesn't matter, Jessica said, her eyes dark. He's going to argue that he was the intended parent, that you and he had an agreement, and that his financial and emotional investment grants him rights. He's going to try and take the baby. The threat was terrifyingly real. He would use his money and his power to crush her, to paint her as the unstable villain of Eleanor's narrative and position himself as the stable, wealthy father figure. This baby, this innocent life, was about to become the rope in a brutal tug-of-war. That night, unable to sleep, Sarah found herself back in Mark's home office. The space felt different now, not just forbidden, but sinister. She wasn't looking for anything in particular. She was just trying to understand the man she had lived with. She ran her hands over his expensive books, his polished desk, his leather-bound journals. She opened a drawer, then another. And then she found it. Tucked away in the very back of his bottom desk drawer, beneath a mess of old cables and defunct electronics, was a thin, leather-bound folio. It wasn't a journal. It looked like a legal document. She pulled it out. The cover was embossed in gold leaf with the words, "The Jonathan P. Johnson Family Trust." Jonathan P. Johnson was Mark's late grandfather, a ruthless real estate mogul who had built the family for fortune. Sarah had never seen this document before. Mark had always been vague about the specifics of his inheritance, simply saying it was complicated. She opened the folio. It was dense with legalese, but she scanned through it, her heart beginning to pound. She found the section on beneficiaries. It detailed the distribution of the massive estate upon the passing of Mark's father. And then she saw the clause. It was titled Article 4 Stipulations for Progeny. She read it once, then, twice the words blurring through a haze of disbelief. The clause stipulated that any grandchild, in order to inherit their full multi-million-dollar share of the trust, must be married and have produced a legitimate heir to carry on the Johnson family line. There was a deadline. The heir had to be born before the grandchild's 35th birthday. Sarah's blood went cold. She pulled out her phone and did a quick search. Mark's birthday. It was in 6 weeks. He was turning 35. The entire scheme, in all its cold, calculating horror, laid itself bare in her mind. This was never about love. It was never about having a family with her. It was about a deadline. It was about money. He couldn't produce a legitimate heir himself. Maybe he was sterile, a fact his pride would never allow him to admit. So he had outsourced it. He'd procured an anonymous egg and anonymous sperm. He'd hired a surrogate her under the guise of marriage. He would get his heir, meet the trust's deadline, and secure his fortune. What was his plan for after divorce, her most likely? Pay her off. Create a new narrative where she was the one who left, and he was the tragic single father. The whisper at the baby shower wasn't just a moment of cruelty. It was the sound of a man who thought he had won, who saw the finish line, and got sloppy underestimating the woman he had chosen for her perceived meekness. The diamond bracelet, it was probably a gift for the egg donor, or someone else involved in the conspiracy. The late nights, the secret calls, they were the logistics of his fraud. Her years of infertility hadn't been a shared tragedy. They had been her primary qualification for the role he needed her to play. A woman desperate for a child would be grateful compliant and wouldn't ask too many questions. She sank to the floor, the legal document clutched in her hand. The betrayal was so much deeper than infidelity. It was a repudiation of her entire existence. She hadn't been a wife or a partner. She had been a business transaction, a walking, talking loophole in a trust fund document. The firestorm outside was nothing compared to the inferno of rage and violation that now consumed her. He wasn't just going to lose. She was going to burn his entire world to the ground. Armed with the trust document, Sarah was no longer just a heartbroken victim. She was a woman holding a motive. The cold, hard proof of Mark's multi-million-dollar incentive transformed her case from a messy divorce into a calculated fraud. The fight was no longer just for public sympathy, but for legal justice. Her sister Jessica, after reading the damning clause, looked up with eyes blazing. "This is it, sir," she said, her voice a low, steady hum of fury. "This is the whole ball game." They hired Helen Pierce, the most formidable family law attorney in Arizona, a shark in a Chanel suit. Helen listened to Sarah's entire story without interruption, her expression unreadable. When Sarah finished placing the trust document on the polished table between them, Helen leaned forward, a dangerous glint in her eyes. "Mrs. Johnson," she said, her voice like gravel and steel, "we will not be filing for divorce. A divorce implies there was a valid marriage to begin with. We are going to have this union annulled on the grounds of profound and deliberate fraud." He didn't marry a woman. He acquired an asset to unlock a trust fund. We will sue him and his conspirators for every penny. The legal battle commenced with brutal speed. Mark's attorneys, funded by what was left of his liquid assets, came out swinging. They filed motions to have Sarah psychologically evaluated, desperately trying to sell the narrative of the unstable, vengeful wife his mother had painted. They fought to have the trust document deemed inadmissible, calling it an invasion of privacy. But Helen Pierce methodically dismantled their attacks. While the lawyers fought in court, Jessica, now working alongside Helen's team, dedicated herself to unraveling Mark's life. She spearheaded the effort to subpoena his financial records, poring over years of statements, searching for the missing pieces of the puzzle. It was there, buried in a mountain of transactions, that she found it a series of large payments to a shell corporation named DB Ventures LLC. DB. Jessica murmured, her paralegal mind instantly making the connection. David Barton. Mark's best friend and best man. The discovery was the key that unlocked the conspiracy's darkest chambers. A subpoena of DB Ventures' records revealed its sole purpose to facilitate Mark's scheme. They found a predatory surrogacy contract with a young woman named Maria Costa, who had been paid a pittance to act as a gestational carrier. And they found records from a California fertility clinic that laid the final horrifying truth bare. The genetic material was from 2 anonymous donors. The sperm had been selected from a catalogue to match Mark's general characteristics. The egg was also from a stranger. There was no old college flame named Chloe. That had been another lie, a panicked invention in the initial fallout. Mark had no biological connection to this child whatsoever. He had simply commissioned a designer baby to meet a deadline, and his best friend David Barton had managed the logistics. The late nights, the secret calls it, was the business of their conspiracy. The betrayal was staggering in its scope. Mark had used Sarah's body, Maria's body, and the genetic material of 2 strangers, all in the cold pursuit of wealth. He never wanted to be a father. He wanted a living, breathing key to a vault. Faced with a subpoena and the threat of criminal charges, David Barton folded. He agreed to testify against Mark in exchange for immunity, providing a detailed account of the entire scheme. The final piece was finding Maria. Helen's investigators located her in a small San Diego apartment, terrified and confused. Against her lawyer's initial advice, Sarah insisted on meeting her. The 2 women sat in a neutral office, their pregnant bellies a silent testament to the man who had deceived them both. Maria, speaking in hesitant English, explained she believed she was carrying a baby for a loving couple, where the wife, Mrs. Johnson, was the biological mother who simply couldn't carry the child herself. Seeing this gentle, frightened young woman, another pawn in Mark's cruel game, extinguished the last of Sarah's grief, replacing it with a cold, diamond-hard resolve. This was no longer just about her own pain. It was about protecting the 2 innocent children, biological siblings conceived as props in this monstrous fraud. The trial was a media spectacle, but it was decisively short. With David Barton's damning testimony, the irrefutable trust document, the fraudulent surrogacy contract, and the 0% paternity test, Mark's defense crumbled into dust. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, was visibly appalled by the evidence. In her ruling, she didn't mince words, calling Mark's actions a campaign of profound psychological terrorism. The annulment was granted. The judge issued a ruling that permanently stripped Mark of any and all parental claims to both unborn children, calling his connection to them a biological and emotional fiction. His assets were frozen, and in the final crushing blow, the judge referred the entire case to the district attorney's office for a criminal investigation. Sarah walked out of the courthouse, leaving Mrs. Johnson behind in the wreckage. She wasn't a wife anymore. She was Sarah Miller again, her maiden name, a shield and a promise. She stepped into the blinding Arizona sun, not as a victim, but as a survivor who had burned her predator's world to the ground. She was, for the first time in years, truly free. The aftermath of the trial was less a chaotic storm and more a quiet, steady rain washing away the debris of Sarah's former life. She sold the sprawling Scottsdale house, a monument to a beautiful lie, and with the proceeds from the sale and her substantial fraud settlement, she moved north. In the mountain town of Flagstaff, she bought a modest home, trading the desert's bleached memories for the scent of pine and the quiet reality of her new life with Lily Hope Miller. Her days, once measured by social engagements, were now marked by the simple, messy, joyful rhythms of motherhood. The fates of the men who built the lie unfolded with grim, karmic precision. Mark Johnson's calculated scheme for an inheritance ended with a 3-year federal prison sentence for fraud. His name disgraced and his assets gone. He lost the fortune he had sacrificed his soul to obtain. David Barton, his accomplice, avoided prison by testifying against his friend, but his career was shattered, his reputation as a man of treachery preceding him wherever he went. Eleanor Johnson simply faded into social exile, a woman undone by her son's monstrous ambition. Sarah's most surprising act of reconstruction involved Maria Costa. Using a portion of her settlement, Sarah established a trust for the young woman, giving her the financial security Mark had used as bait. When Maria gave birth to a healthy boy, Lily's biological brother, an unlikely family was formed. Linked by the 2 children and the shared trauma inflicted by the same man, Sarah and Maria forged a bond of mutual support, creating something true from the ashes of a profound deceit. For Lily, Sarah began a journal. She filled its pages with the whole truth, not to dwell on the pain, but to frame the story as one of resilience. She wanted her daughter to know she was not the product of a lie, but the reason a critical truth was brought to light, that she was wanted, cherished, and born from a battle her mother had fiercely won. Years later, Sarah still received occasional emails, messages from women who saw her story and found the courage to question their own realities, to fight back against the gaslighting in their own lives. She had never intended to be a symbol for anyone. Her viral video was an act of desperation, a primal scream for justice. Yet in saving herself, she had accidentally become a beacon. The whisper at the baby shower was meant to be her end, but it was just the beginning. It had set her free to build a life that was finally beautifully her own. Sarah's story is a harrowing reminder that sometimes the most picture-perfect lives hide the most monstrous secrets. It's a story of unimaginable betrayal, but it's also a story of incredible strength. She transformed from a victim of a diabolical fraud into a warrior who fought for her child and her own truth. By refusing to be silenced, she didn't just expose a monster. She reclaimed her own life, and in a twist she never expected created a new unconventional family, built on honesty and mutual respect. Her journey from the depths of despair to becoming a symbol of resilience for others is a testament to the power of a woman who decides she will no longer be a pawn in someone else's game. What did you think of Sarah's incredible story? Could you ever forgive a betrayal this deep? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched you, please give this video a thumbs up. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, and make sure you subscribe to our channel for more unforgettable real-life stories.